You're listening to a CNA podcast.
The Pacific is home to more than 25,000 islands. It's a rich oceanic tapestry where ancient cultures are imbued with deep spirituality and connections with land, sea, and sky. Countless generations have primed the people of the Pacific to survive. But today, powerful forces threaten to unravel the fabric of life on the isolated coral atolls and peaceful oceanside villages that dot the map. Hi, and welcome to Climate Conversations. I'm Jack Board. Li Ling is on a much-deserved holiday, so it's just me this week. We're doing things a little differently today. I'm going to take you deep into one of my stories, actually a series of stories from the Pacific region. I recently travelled over there to 3 countries that you may not know that well: Fiji, Kiribati, and Tuvalu. In these countries, climate change is causing irreversible impacts to coastlines, challenging the wills of governments, and shaping the futures of young people. The concepts of home, of nationhood, and of belonging are all being tested. I'm flying over the Pacific Ocean. It appears like there's nothing but water all around, an enormous blue expanse. I'm on a Fiji Airways flight, heading for the Tuvalu capital of Funafuti. The plane starts to descend towards a tiny sliver of land, a coral atoll to be more exact. But suddenly, the plane lurches up. The landing is abandoned. People grip their seats just a bit. The pilot's voice comes over the intercom.
I'm sorry about that. There was a dog on the runway, so we'll go around and try again.
When the plane does land, I could see exactly how a dog ended up there. It's a single runway in the middle of the island, flanked by houses and schools. Children and their parents wave at us just a few meters from our Boeing 737. There's no fence, no barrier. And once this single flight lands and then takes off again, the runway becomes a normal road and a place for local residents to play volleyball and rugby in the evening. It feels kind of indicative of what a remote outpost Tuvalu is. It's one of the most isolated countries on the planet, and increasingly it's being defined by its battle with climate change, especially the rising tides that bite away at the fragile coast. The nation has become a curiosity, now increasingly attracting researchers and writers just like me to understand this unfolding phenomenon. It's a morbid examination, I guess, of what it means for an entire country to disappear off the face of the map. Now, even some locals are leaning into this narrative. At my guest house in Funafuti, t-shirts hang up for sale behind reception. Tuvalu, frontline to climate change, and Tuvalu, where climate change is a reality, adorn the fronts of those t-shirts. But for those who are deep in the fight, the situation is more than just a slogan. It's a matter of saving the place, the culture, and the people.
When we talk about the disappearance of Tuvalu, although it really downplays our resilience as Tuvaluans who have lived in this island for many, many years, but also the other side of the coin, it really gained a lot of international attention when it comes to our vulnerability.
That's Tuvalu's reasonably new climate change minister, Maina Talia. I met him in his office to chat about the challenges ahead for the country. The government is doing what it can to ensure Tuvalu stays on the map. In September last year, the country's constitution was amended to state that Tuvalu's statehood would remain in perpetuity, regardless of whether its physical territory was lost. Now, theoretically, that shores up Tuvalu's existence as a nation, but it also raises another discussion about a worst-case scenario, having to relocate the entire country to a new place. That's hard to imagine. Yet, already, people are on the move. A treaty last year agreed with Australia will grant up to 280 long-term visas annually for Tuvaluans. It's framed as a special human mobility pathway for individuals and families to live, work and study in Australia. For a country with a total population of about 12,000 people, it's a big number. But there's hope that those who go will still come back.
Basically, our government continue to insist that migration is a definite no, but it's a matter of choice for our people. Our people have the liberty to live if they are willing to live. And I think our role as a government is to facilitate those processes. What are the pathways? Our role as a government is to ensure that we keep Tuvalu afloat. Because if we are to migrate to other parts of the world, and one day my kids will ask me, where is Tuvalu? Where are we from? And Tuvalu has already disappeared from the face of the earth. And then when we don't have any point of reference to tell our children and their children, this is where we are from.
It's a debate that seems to be resonating, unsurprisingly, with young people. The draw of greater work and education opportunities overseas is real. What do you do if you're not sure about what your future at home looks like? It's fight or flee. So I spent some time with Gitty Yi. She's a young photographer in Tuvalu. A lot of her work centres on capturing the realities of climate change around Funafuti, as well as the unique culture of her country. She's resisting a move for now, but has friends who are ready to go, keen to live a modern lifestyle in another place.
From my own perspective, I wouldn't want to leave Tuvalu, even though we're being told a lot of things about Tuvalu, that Tuvalu is going to go underwater. And the thing is, we're just trying to adapt to something that we didn't create in the first place, which is sad. This place is peaceful. It's home. Everyone's friendly to each other. We know each other, and we could take our traditions out of Tuvalu, but it would never be the same as having it here. It is very hard to imagine that not everyone gets to see Tuvalu sunset, right? And with climate change, sea level rising, Tuvaluans moving out of Tuvalu, they're going to miss out on a lot. Not every place has a sunset. Some place could be very cloudy, or some big cities wouldn't even see the sunset. But Tuvalu, we just see the sunset and we just know it's another day. We live the whole day. We get to see that sunset, and every sunset is so different and beautiful.
Tuvalu isn't the only place where this dilemma is unfolding. Some 3,000 kilometres away, even further into the Pacific expanse, is the country of Kiribati. The coral atolls and the shallow lagoons here hardly seem real. Picture the Maldives without the development of tourism infrastructure. Most of its land is barely above sea level, so it's become one of the most vulnerable countries to disappearing beneath the waves. And it's a geographical curiosity. It's made up of dozens of islands spread out across this vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, over 3.5 million square kilometres. It's the only country in the world in all 4 hemispheres. Far from being considered at the edges of the planet, an old legend in Kiribati that talks of this country being literally at its centre. But the rest of the world drags on people's loyalties to stay there. Young people are standing at a crossroads. I spoke with Max Tier. He's an emerging local climate activist, and he's adamant that culture and place are too important to just abandon.
I think that the young people are scared and they're feared for the future and for climate change if it's still happening, because they think it will get worse and worse every year. Some really want to stay here. Some get a chance to go abroad for their future. Well, who doesn't want a better future? So maybe 90% will go. My culture is my first priority and everything, yeah. Without this culture, we won't be known in the world. So I'd rather stay here. If it's the end of our culture, I will be here.
Kiribati is digging in. A few years ago, the Kiribati government seemed resigned to the realities of climate change. It was set on this policy of migration with dignity, and it purchased a large piece of coastal land, some 2,000 kilometres away in Fiji. Now, this was flagged as a possible future home for the 130,000 citizens of Kiribati. To date, it remains empty, mostly unused. Instead, the current leadership has pivoted to stay. But doing that is complicated, and the country's increasingly been drawn into China's orbit. It officially severed ties with Taiwan back in 2019 as it moved to strengthen relations with Beijing. About $160 million in Chinese financial aid arrived in the 2 years following that move. But Kiribati needs much more. Walking around in the capital, Tarawa, I can see the challenges, the broken seawalls, the broken infrastructure, the lack of economic opportunities. This is one of the most poverty-stricken nations on Earth. Experts say that both paths, staying or leaving, should be debated. This is Pelanisa Lofa, a long-time climate action advocate in the country.
Reality is this: we can have both. We can talk about both. There's nothing wrong about staying. There's nothing wrong about leaving. But if you leave, if you want to live, that's why we say, if you want to live with dignity. If you want to stay with dignity. I cannot see us living at this time. I'm still trying to adapt. And our work is to say, no, we are not drowning. We will fight this problem. And we are fighting it right here on this land where we're living right now. We will stop the water coming. But we do not know, maybe in the next 20 or 50 years, our great-grandchildren may say, oh, we can't stay here anymore.
In Fiji, a similar type of conversation is happening, just with different considerations. A much larger nation, the issue of internal relocations is a top agenda item. In fact, it's an official strategy. But moving communities involves hugely complex and emotional processes, which Fiji's new Standard Operating Procedures for Planned Relocation aims to manage. These are moves often beset by sadness, the feeling that something is lost during the process. Community ties are a powerful force in Fiji, and it's climate change threatening to undermine them. Here's Isoa Talema Mbua from Fiji's Ministry of Rural and Maritime Development, which is in charge of the government's SOP.
It's a painful process. People leaving behind what they've been attached to for years, or generations and generations. And most of them cry over their land. Most of them, it's a form of attachment that really touches their mind, soul, and body. So it's a painful job for all of us.
I travelled to a place called Vuni Sabi Sabi. It's one of more than 800 villages in Fiji, earmarked to be potentially relocated to a new place due to the worsening threats posed by a fast-warming planet. It's a stunning place. Freshwater streams flow gently towards the sea, shaded by these rich, tall canopies of dense lowland forest. The sea is a striking blue. It's shallow, enriched by vast coral reef systems. Local villages that dot the shorelines and mountainsides are immaculately kept and ordered. Mostly, small rippling waves gnaw at the sandy shorelines. But these waves have grown violent in the past, and they will be again. Locals here have seen it. On the ever-shrinking beach that curls around Vunisabi Sabi lies a dramatic symbol of both hope and turmoil. An enormous banyan tree has been toppled in recent years. Powerful winds and waves wrenched its roots out of sandy foundations, leaving its broad trunk lying prone. Children climb and play on the tree. It's become this vantage point for young ones to scan the open water on the horizon. And it also neatly forms a physical barrier between the ocean, which is this growing source of danger, and the village, an increasingly insecure refuge. Locals here say it was planted more than half a century ago, yet even in its fallen state, roots exposed to the salt and spray, the tree lives. As climate change threatens to uproot communities here, the banyan is a metaphor for their fight to remain in place. The same could be said for much of this region, but eventually they may not have a choice. That's it for Climate Conversations this week. If you want to read or watch more about climate survival in the Pacific, please jump across to the CNA website. These stories are dropping over 3 consecutive weekends. Thanks for joining me. I'm Jack Board. And thanks as always to the team that put together this podcast: Tiffany Ung, Janani Jahari, Crispina Robert, and Sai Yerwin.